And a warm welcome once again at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24. We're going to talk about taxes with government making the tax identification number mandatory and many reforms being introduced this year. Since the 1st of January, VAT increased by 3% and 97 other items which were earlier exempt from tax are now imposed with a value-added tax of 18% starting 1st of January. To discuss all this and much more about Sri Lanka's tax regime, the system, and how these taxes that we as citizens pay will eventually benefit the people. That is what we will be discussing at Hyde Park tonight. I've invited to our studios from the Inland Revenue Department, Deputy Commissioner General of Inland Revenue, Saman Shantha. A very warm welcome to you. We also have from the Inland Revenue Department, Senior Deputy Commissioner Nihal Wijewardana, who's here. Thank you very much for joining us. And also we have with us partner and head of tax, Ernst & Young, Sulaiman Nesta. A very warm welcome to you too. Tonight, we'll start off talking about the tax identification number. Mr. Saman Shantha, first of all, the tax identification number now, how many have registered with you in these first 11 days of the month so far?
Yes, thank you very much. As all of you know, last year, 31st May 2023, there was a special Gazette notification. That Gazette notification says people who 18 plus years have to register from 1st January 2024 for the taxation. Taxation means they have to get the TIN number, that is taxpayer identification number. They have to get tax identification number. As you asked, from the 1st January to today, we don't have actual figures because number of people come to the department, come online, go to the regional officers to get the TIN number. Actually, these days we are doing the job issuing the tax identification number them. So we are not in a position to calculate the actual amount that we issue to the taxpayer for the TIN certificates. After this month, we can say what is the amount that we have issued to the taxpayers for the month of January 2024.
But this is a very busy period for you.
Yes, very busy period. Our employees work 7:30 to 8 some days to fulfill the taxpayers' requirements.
But does this also mean that we will see more revenue coming in? Yeah. Or is this mechanism to identify those who are above 18 and to register them all? What's the whole purpose behind this? I think a lot of education is needed.
Yes, actually, the purpose of this is, first of all, we have to identify who are the people over 18 years residents in Sri Lanka. So after identify those people, we can identify who are the liable person to pay the income tax. As you all know, the liable threshold for the income tax is 1.2 million per year. If their income, net income or net profit exceed 1.2 million per year, those people liable to pay income tax. So we have to identify who are them. Before identify the people, we have to identify who are the people in Sri Lanka over 18 years. After register them, we can identify who are the people liable to pay tax. For that purpose, we have to get more things to identify them, cash them for the tax net. That is, we have to link with the other institutions to get their information. From this year, it is notice persons who get to the vehicle registration certificate, who want to renew the vehicle license, and person who approved the building plan, like that person need to get the TIN certificate. From those things we can identify people who has more money. Already the people said there are more people in the country who do not pay the taxes, but we have identified only few people and tax them time to time. That is why we want to catch the people who liable to pay tax but they hide, and we want to catch them.
I'd like to, before coming back to the IRD, I would like to turn to a tax expert from Ernst & Young Partners, Sulaiman Nista. Let's talk about the system that's brought in, the government imposing taxes, reforms, and also value-added tax increase from 15 to 18%, and some products which were earlier exempt are imposed with an 18% fresh value-added tax. With all that, it's a difficult period for the people at the same time, but do you think there's enough education or awareness among the people about what really is being done with these taxes? Because the perception is that government uses the people's funds for corrupt activities, to keep commissions out of it. So do you think, as an outsider of the government, that there is sufficient work being done?
So I think there are two issues in that question. One is on the income side, and the other is the expenditure side. So I think the mistake we're probably making is always mixing that up and bringing a reason to say because there is corruption, let's not pay tax. So that I think we need to bifurcate the two solely for the reason and the experience that we had in the last 2 to 3 years, right? And every single one of us, even though we don't have a TIN number, paid half our wealth as tax in the form of inflation, right? So if you take your wealth prior to 2018, it has half today, easily. You will realize this if you go abroad and try to buy something, it is double the price. Why? Because our wealth has dropped, and that itself is a natural taxation that we face for evading tax. If we had paid our taxes the way we should, we wouldn't have been in such a dire situation, because then the government wouldn't have had to borrow. But yes, on the other hand, whilst we do protect our income, and that is I think everyone's duty and the government's duty to make sure it happens equally in a level playing field, without some paying and some not. The expense side, like you very rightly said, confidence has to be given to the public that the income that is collected is utilized properly, utilized without corruption, and for the right reasons, without any wastage. So that area of communication has to be built up, but I don't think anyone can say that we don't know where our tax money is going, because if you take the budget, it's very clearly there what departments it's going for, what that money is being expended for. So you can see very clearly a lot of it is going for interest payments. You can see very clearly a lot of it is going for defense. You can see it's very clear where the money is going, and there isn't enough money to spend properly to actually develop education, to develop. So there isn't enough collection actually. If you want to see where the money is
most of this money is used productively.
Correct.
Is also a question.
Correct. So whilst it has been allocated, that is the second part that the government needs to do to ensure it is utilized correctly without corruption, and that was, I think, proposed in the budget, but we need to see implementation, like you said. In the right
again, how I'd like to turn to Mr. Nihal Wijewardana, Senior Deputy Commissioner at the Inland Revenue Department. How is this mechanism going to be implemented? Of course, now there is information on social media, on newspapers, on television, and all media channels that everyone above the age of 18 must register for a taxpayer identification number until the 31st of December, and there is a fine that is chargeable, 50,000 rupees if not. But take us through this implementation process. Who's implementing it? Of course, IRD, but then the fine, and thereon, what are the challenges going forward?
Yes, yes. Actually, this Gazette, the people are talking about this Gazette these days. So this Gazette came as a law, part of law, because of the proposal made in interim budget 2022. They are actually after certain period we experience so much of lesser amount of taxes we have collected, and it's as a percentage of GDP it's came down from 12 to 7%. So at that stage interim budget has been presented in Parliament in 2022. There one of major budget proposal was to keep tax identification number for every individuals over 18 years. Based on that proposal, government has issued a Gazette notification. So that Gazette notification has been issued based on the power vested by the Minister of Finance under section 102 subsection 3 of the Inland Revenue Act number 24 of 2017 with the consent of the Commissioner General. So that Gazette has been issued in 2023 that according to that Gazette notification, immediately there were 14 categories of classes of person have been gazetted, and they are required to obtain their TIN number with effect from 1st June 2023. Because they are actually, we have identified, the minister has identified certain categories of taxpayers who may have taxable income, but sometimes, for an example, there it says all lawyers or chartered accountants have to obtain their TIN number prior to that date. But sometimes there may be housewives, they may not receive any income for a year of assessment. Even though they are not receive any income, they have to get this TIN number, because tax liability imposed on the person who receives more than 1.2 million amount of taxable income for a year of assessment. Year of assessment normally start from April 1st to 31st March of next year. If any person's taxable income is more than 1.2 million after deducting a personal relief entitled by all resident individual, if there is a tax liability, they have to get the TIN certificate from the Commissioner General, because this TIN certificate means tax identification number. That is the first point that the taxpayer come into the department and registered as a taxpayer. So there, if the taxpayer is liable for income tax, I mean he is having a taxable income, he has to get income tax registration as well. But this Gazette is a different one. There we are expecting to register all individuals reaching 18 years on or after 1st January 2024, and all individuals who reached 18 years as at 31st December 2023 to the tax net. But prior to that date, there were 14 categories of classes of person. They have to get the TIN registration prior to that date. And one thing also I have to highlight it, because this Gazette is applicable only for resident individuals. Resident has to be identified based on the provisions of the Inland Revenue Act. So according to the Inland Revenue Act, if any individual is non-resident, then there is no requirement to get this TIN certificate.
So we'd like to clarify that there have been a lot of queries whether Sri Lankan citizens who are overseas, because the initial statement during the budget was that anyone above the age of 18 must register for tax or are liable for tax. So what happens to Sri Lankan citizens overseas?
Yes, there are so many Sri Lankan citizens stays abroad to do some employment work. Sometimes they may stay permanently in those countries. So they don't want to get this TIN certificate because they are resident for the purpose of Inland Revenue Act. They are not. They are actually non-resident. So this TIN requirement is not applicable for them. But there is another requirement for them if they are deriving taxable income from Sri Lanka, because sometimes they may have passive sources of income like interest, rent, likewise, they may have some income sources in Sri Lanka. If they are deriving income sources like that, and once their tax liability is calculated, and if there is a taxable income and has to pay any tax, they have to register with the department.
Let me clarify. Those who are non-resident but who have bank accounts with accumulating funds or rent income earned throughout that year should register for the taxpayer.
No, it's not correct, because sometimes you may have some interest amount. Even though that interest amount is less than 1.2 million, they also, as a Sri Lankan citizen, they also entitled for this personal relief of 1.2 million. If their interest income is less than 1.2 million, they can have that personal relief benefit, and they don't want to pay tax.
No, this is not about paying taxes. What I'm asking about is the tax, whether you should register for the tax
all
identification.
non-resident, they don't want to register for TIN certificate. TIN registration they don't require. I mean, this Gazette notification is not applicable for non-resident. Non-resident, whether you are a citizen or non-citizen, if you are a non-resident, then this requirement is not applicable. But when imposing taxes for non-resident as well, if they are deriving particular income or from Sri Lanka, then there is a tax liability for them. So that is why I.
So how will that be implemented? I think that's very quickly, if we can clarify that. Yeah. Above 1.2 million annual income, so non-residents do not have to register, but if you're taking out income which is 1.2 million above over the year, you're taxable. So yeah. how does that tax system, how do you plan to implement it?
Yes, as explained by Mr. Nihal, the special Gazette notification issued is clearly mentioned additional classes of persons required to register under section 102 of the IR Act shall be the resident persons. This Gazette notification applied only the resident person in Sri Lanka.
So those who are non-residents are not taxable even if you have income, rent income or interest income earned throughout that year.
I will explain like this. If say there is a person, that person has a dual citizenship, or another person is a PR, or some persons over 18 years persons in other country for the studying purpose, right? If that person has income sources in Sri Lanka and earn some income from Sri Lanka for the year of assessment, that amount exceed the 1.2 million per year, only that person required to register and get the TIN number. That is not mentioned in the Gazette notification. It's the normal Inland Revenue law. If any person earn income from Sri Lanka, liable to pay taxes. In resident person in Sri Lanka, earn income in Sri Lanka or any other country, total income is liable to pay income tax.
So one may wonder if the Gazette notification does not call for non-residents to register for the TIN number, whether they should really, even if the taxable income is above 1.2 million. So how will the IRD really look into this income? Is there a centralized mechanism to gather information of individual incomes earned?
Yes, actually these days we are implementing the system. It is not completed. Normally we have all details who has the motor vehicles, all details with the department. And like that, when bank pay the interest to the deposit holder, it is required to deduct 5% and remit to the Commissioner General's account. Those details also with the department. Likewise, we ask some details from the several institutions. So those details have the department that we want to, actually we know what are the amount that person export to other countries, import from another countries. All details we have because we have linked with the customs. Like that we want to link with the other government institution as well banks to get those information.
So that process is currently happening. How does, of course, the private sector too, I'd like to talk about the private sector, especially professionals have been continuing to pay taxes throughout last year as well with the tax imposition, income tax especially. So with that, how does this taxable income work? Do the corporates or companies that you work for pay taxes on your behalf? If that happens, are individuals liable or are they punishable according to this Gazette? Or how does this work?
Yeah, so from the private sector side, if you're talking about employees, there was a big jolt because the entire PAY scheme was removed, and then we paid no tax, at least the employer didn't deduct, although we had an obligation to pay. So if you didn't pay, then with the new APIT system, it's called Advanced Income Tax System, the employer now deducts not 18% at that time, but now maximum of 36%. So a good chunk of your salary goes out and that goes to the department. Despite that tax being paid, you still have an obligation to obtain a TIN, and if you're over 1 lakh a month, file a return, right? But there is an exclusion as an employee. If that's your only income, you don't have to file a return, right? But that is very unlikely because you are likely to have some sort of deposit earning interest income. So that will take that exemption away. And despite, again, I reiterate, the employer deducting taxes from you, you still have to, if you have other income, obtain a TIN and file a return. So yes, that you're trapped there as an employee. The employer takes that obligation. Most employers, I believe, do pay some. It's then again how much you pay. Are you paying on the whole salary? Is it a part of it? So those are areas I think audits from the IRD will have to resolve. But I think again, paying the right amount of tax, as it is difficult both ways for the employee as well as the state.
How would you advise an employer who's watching this program to go about this? Register for your TIN, but do you have to keep tabs on how your income is filed with the IRD, or your taxable income is filed and then you pay taxes? Because I think for a nation that is not familiar with tax paying, when I look at the numbers here, we see that in 2017, 1.7 million tax files were registered with the IRD, if I'm not mistaken. But it dropped to some 677,000. And recently, State Minister Ranjit also mentioned that a very low number of tax files that were open. But we're obviously assuming that with the new regulations, there will be many more complying with these taxes and all above 18 registering. But especially for those who work for companies, private limited companies, major corporations, non-governmental organizations, I think they're not liable for certain taxes. But how does this really, I mean, as an employee rather, what should you be looking out for?
So I look at it from, talk about it from both ways, starting with the employer, right? So employer has an obligation to assess the right amount of income you're paying as salary or remuneration to your employee, withhold it and pay the department on a monthly basis. So the issue there is if the employer doesn't take that responsibility properly, on an audit, the department can come and later on, after 2-3 years, even after the employee has left, will come after you. So you will be as an employer out of pocket if you don't deduct the right amount. Plus they will reconcile that with what you're showing in your accounts as what you paid your employee as well. So you will have a salary amount that you're deducting for tax in your P&L, and they'll compare this with what you have actually paid PAYE on. So there you kind of get trapped.
So these companies will be held accountable if they do not submit what's deducted from employees.
Not only deducted, but the right amount. So let's say I'm earning 1 lakh and the employer only takes 50,000 for PAY, that other 50,000 the employer is exposed, right? Because I haven't done it, and I can't deduct it then from the employee later. I have to pay it on my own after that. So there is a issue with you taking that responsibility as an employer later on, which is a financial cost to you, a risk. On the employee's side, if once the employer has deducted the fair share of PAY tax, they are expected to give you a T10 certificate at the end of the year. That will stipulate what is the total amount I paid you as salary, this is the total amount I deducted, and I have paid it to the Department of Inland Revenue on your behalf. That's like cash. That T10 is like cash, proof that you have discharged your liability. If you have that and you are over 100,000 a month, you have to get a tin, and you have to also, so this tin business, whilst I think they explained it, the tin you get it, but you have to also choose a tax type. Once you register for the tin, that doesn't automatically make you file a return or pay tax. TIN is just an identification, you are identified only. After that, you have to go a step ahead. If you have income over 1 lakh a month, you need to get what is register for income tax, a tax type, right? And then only you will get a return and a facility to pay your taxes at the right time. So it's extremely important if you're over 1 lakh to file that. Also, it's not only over 1 lakh, because for example, there may be on certain types of income that your somebody is withholding tax from you. Let's say I have 90,000 rupees of interest income a month, not 1 lakh. Technically, I don't have to file a return. But if I do register, the 5% the bank is withholding on that 90,000, I can claim a refund. Right? So you need to see your income sources and whether somebody is deducting tax from you which you are not eligible to pay.
So you can ask for a rebate of that tax if your income is
less than 1 lakh a month.
Less than 1 lakh a month or 1.2 million a year. Is that
that's
okay?
Right. That's right.
Okay. But what happens to those who pay for loans? Because I remember many years ago there was a tax rebate system for those who had housing loans in their names or vehicle leases. So there was a significant amount. Sri Lankan salaries, the major portion
went
is,
off
yes, for loans and other commitments. So how does it work now? There is no rebate, I suppose.
Yes, unfortunately everything has been removed, and the 36% kicks in at about close to 3 lakhs, so it's very tight, and you're not getting any deduction for children's school fees or housing loans, or not even the interest on housing loan. I think there's only on solar panels, I think there is a deduction that's still continuing. Other than that, they've removed everything. So perhaps with the rate being so high, that may be the other areas the government can look at in giving those deductions, like other countries where you have a very high tax rate, to give deductions on things that you really need, because the tax-free threshold also is so low at 1.2 million. So that is, I think, something we'll have to evolve into and start giving those concessions to ensure there is comfort amongst the public. Plus, you divert funds into areas in the economy you need, like housing, for example.
Right. I'd like to speak more about advanced economies, tax systems, and how these are implemented. But that once we come back after this short break. To stay with us at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24. Welcome back. We're in conversation with experts and the IRD about Sri Lanka's new regulations and reforms pertaining to tax. We were talking about the TIN. I'd like to know how the IRD is really going to create awareness and get citizens above the age of 18 to register with the IRD to obtain a taxpayer. The question is open to both gentlemen, especially when it comes to registration. On social media, we saw recently that there were certain individuals who ask for personal information, especially your national identity card number, bank details, and some fall prey to these scams as well. So how do we look out for these scams and then stay out of them, but again comply with IRD regulations. Where do you have to go and register? There is an online system, but those who do not have access to internet or a computer, how do they have access to this?
Yes, I will explain it like this. First of all, I would like to say why government need to increase revenue. As all of us know, the government is not in a position to print money now. Government is not in a position to get loan from local or foreign sources. Then government need money for what? For health, for studies, to pay public servant salary, pensioner salary, different infrastructure facilities. Government need money. If the government not in a position to take money by printing money or taking loan, government need to increase the money to give money to assume persons like that. Then why is that new laws and reforms came into effect? So what we want to do is we want to aware the people of the country to pay taxes if that person is liable to pay income tax. So we asked the people, please come to the department and take the tax identification number. When I say come to department, no need to come to department. There are three ways. Person can come to the Inland Revenue Department and fill the form and get the TIN number.
That's manually, you fill it.
That's manually. Or can go to our regional office. Nearest regional office can get the form and fill it and get the TIN number.
So every divisional secretariat division has
I will explain
okay.
it. Then second thing is, if the person has a smartphone or laptop or computer, by logging into the IRD website, can download the forms, e-services, access to e-services, like that, go to the e-services log and fill the forms. Forms is there. When fill the forms, necessary pages to be filled. In addition to that, that person has to scan and upload the both sides of the identity card. If the address of the identity card it differ from the current address, that person has to prove the billing purpose, a new address proving the billing documents or whatever. Then if don't have any other things, the first page of the bank account is okay, because the name and address is there, no?
Right.
Like that. Then after that, it is very easy to log into the system and get the TIN number. Persons has to input their email address also, because for the communication purposes, we need the email address. If that person has an email address, it is very easy to communicate with that person.
For those who do not have an email ID, you would be communicating via
with
regular
the
mail.
mobile number and address also there. No, normally every person want to get the email address. It is now very easy. The person don't know how to create the email address, can assistant from their daughter or son or any other person, because we all persons in Sri Lanka has how to use mobile phone, laptop, like
yes,
that.
Mobile penetration is quite high.
Quite high.
Internet is available, that's true, but we're also talking about those who
Yes.
do not have access to
Yes.
these services.
Then
Plus, I'd also like to say, when you get help from others,
Yes.
make sure it's an official of the IRD assisted organizations
Yes.
or associations
Yes.
or agencies or divisional secretariat divisions, and not fall prey to any social media campaigns or any other individuals who request your personal information, bank account or national identity card numbers, because you might fall prey to these scams and lose your income rather than fulfilling your duties to the nation by paying taxes. I'd also like
Actually, these days we are discussing with the finance ministry to get the assistance from the divisional secretariat. Now we are discussing these days, the people can go to the divisional secretariat.
Right.
They can provide facilities to get the TIN number. the final TIN number is given by the IRD, they can facilitate. So the other thing is, if a person want to come to the department, we can facilitate. In other than I ask tax consultants and tax auditors, please assist their taxpayers to get the TIN number. I heard some charge ₹5,000 to fill the forms and get the TIN number on behalf of the person. That is, I think, that is not good thing.
So how does this happen? I mean, is there any other way that the IRD is facilitating this? You mentioned that it could be done online or manually at the IRD, but the second option where you can at your regional offices. So there are remote areas too. How do you access a government agency or tax consultants who are registered in your respective areas?
Yes, when the Gazette came into operation, as I said, there were 14 type of categories. And to get them into the TIN registration, the Inland Revenue official visited to their places, I mean for employers' premises and for certain organizations' premises, and we have provided required assistance and taxpayer education during past 6 months period. And because as a department which is promoting self-assessment system, it is our duty to provide required assistance and taxpayer education to the taxpaying public. So we have identified that requirement, and accordingly we have taken the benefit of these type of programs and always communicating how easily you taxpayers can get this TIN certificate. Up to now, what we are operating now is getting TIN number manually from the department head office or from the department regional offices and metro office, or through the e-filing system. So later we can move into the next stages after discussing with divisional secretariat office, as Mr. Saman Shantha explained. So we can instruct our taxpayers to get the registration through that scheme, but up to now it's not operated. So there's another way you can get the information, because as you explained, your secret confidential information you should not pass to a person who is not responsible, because as far as tax consultants, auditors are concerned, there are formal tax consultant and auditors, but there are others as well. So don't pass your confidential information to them. Whatever the information or assistance you required, you can call to our hotline, that is 1944, and get the required assistance from us. If not, you can go to the regional office and get the required information, and you can fill forms and get this TIN certificate easily. So some people are not aware about this process, otherwise they will realize that this process is very easy, and once you fill the document, you can simply give it to the regional office or to the head office and wait your TIN certificate over the mail. And if not, you can use the RAMIS system by logging into the IRD website www.ird.gov.lk. So we have already published quick guides, and whatever the assistance we provided as quick guides in our website. So there you can refer those things and you can fill it. If not, get the required assistance from 1944 by calling to our hotline. So that is the formal way that we are suggesting. So unless the taxpayer wanted to go to the tax auditor or tax consultant, you can come to the department and get our assistance. But our advice is go to the formal method to protect your data and protect your information, confidential information.
Right. I'd also like to ask you about how this happens across the globe. They're more advanced and more familiar with taxation, personal income taxation. Senior citizens to children above the age of 18, teenagers, they learn this. They know that they have to pay taxes. So while Sri Lanka is implementing the system now, there are also those who have had tax files with the IRD. So what about them? Because recently at a media briefing, Cabinet spokesperson Bandula Wijewardana said when questioned that he does not have to open a tax identification number because he has already been paying taxes. How does this work, especially when we talk about ministers or those individuals who are high income earners who have not been taxed so far and who have not been in the tax system?
Right. So to answer your question, yes, if you have been filing a return, then obviously you do have a tax identification number already. So that's the starting point. Everyone who is filing a return has a TIN, so you don't have to, there's no implication from this gazette. You have nothing more to do. You have to continue declaring your income and filing your return on time. Those who have not been filing returns, that is why this requirement has come, because there is evasion, right? There is evasion. Those who are earning over the threshold are not paying tax. So I think what they want to do is make sure everyone under 18, over 18 is in the population of registrations, and then you use the data where there are people spending excessively or buying large assets. That when that information comes, you have the whole population with you. So you just then pick the person because you're going to use this same TIN for all of these transactions. To open a bank account now you need it, to buy a property now you need it, to register a car you need it, and to get a building approval you need it. So I think that is the plan, because most have not been adhering, or some, let's say, not say most, let's say some have not been adhering, and it is that is the sort of system they seem to be working on to trap those who are evading.
So do you think the high income earners who have evading taxes again will fall into the tax net here, because there are unaccounted monies that are taxable, large sums, commissions or maybe cash income? Do you think this system is, I'm not mature, but is robust enough to tax these incomes?
So we'll have to actually wait and see, but if you are high net worth and you do have a lot of wealth, what they are looking at is the high spending that this wealth will go into, and that is by the looks of it vehicles, property are the two main, and then the cash, which will be in a bank. But if you are holding cash at home under your bed, that wouldn't probably get captured here. So that will have to look at the spending side. That may be the next. So I think the focus right now is the asset side, where you would store that money. If you store it in a bank, now they're going to get the money from the bank because you have given your TIN for the bank opening. If you buy a car, RME is going to ask for your TIN when they register you. So that's the other one, and property, apartments or land. So I think they've started with the asset side. The next will be the high spending side, for example, foreign trips, for example, big expenditure on credit cards, high electricity bills. So those will be the next line where you will see whether this person really has money, and that's actually kept in cash and not going into any of these formal sources.
So there will be a system eventually that will be developed.
We'll have to progress into that as the next phase.
So I asked you about other countries as well.
Yes.
You work with international corporations, individuals or other international clients. And you probably hear of these. So what other methodologies do you think suits best for Sri
so
Lanka?
very good point. That is actually when you take especially those coming from developed countries like Europe and US, this is actually inculcated in their system. I mean, paying tax is like part of being a good citizen, and that has been inculcated from a very small. So when they come here, we see expats coming, they run to us, and the first thing they want to do is get their filing in order, make sure they know what tax they need to pay, and ensure that process. Because it is from an ethical point of view and a social point of view, they want to contribute. because that has been inculcated as the right thing to do. Number two, the penalties and the penal provisions. Some countries you are imprisoned immediately if you fail on a tax, fail to declare the right amount, evade tax. The penalties are so huge, people just don't want to take a risk. So they pay even half their income to avoid that risk and that shame actually. So those are two areas probably we can, maybe not right now given you started the program with the issues people are facing, so I need you to phase it out slowly. Start convincing people to come in, and then of course once you've given them that chance, maybe a year and a half, then I think those who are still avoiding, you need to go hard.
I think there is, as you mentioned, there is awareness among the people about the tax identification number and the requirement to pay taxes, and there's a lot of encouragement among people to file their taxes, but the question remains where their money goes, although the budget documents where most of these allocations are. So I think in time to come, if government and governments to come can supplement these with infrastructure development or better transport to better quality lifestyles, I think there will be value for the tax that people pay back. We have about a minute each before we wrap up the program. I'm sure you have a message for the public before we wrap up. We'll take the round.
Yes, as we have discussed up to now, so the aim of this Gazette and this requirement is to reduce tax evasion, because there are so many taxpayers who are not paying their due tax amount to the country. So the result is government has to put that revenue effect to the other person. So if any person is liable to pay income tax, he has to pay their share to the government. If not, government has to earn money to cover the government expenditure. The result is putting that tax effect to the indirect taxes like VAT. So that is why recently government has to increase VAT rate up to 18% and to remove so much of exemptions from the VAT Act. So here, as I explained already, the interim budget proposal introduced in 2022, and thereafter two budget proposals presented to the Parliament and passed. So, so much of provisions introduced to the Inland Revenue Act to reduce tax evasion. So, with this move to register all 18 above 18 years resident individuals will take into the Inland Revenue documents or Inland Revenue database, and thereafter we will monitor them by monitoring their transaction, and we can get the due tax collection in future, and thereafter government can consider to reduce other tax effect based on those efforts actually.
Saman Shantha?
Yes, actually here I want to emphasize two things. One is obtaining TIN number is not every person who obtaining a TIN number should have to pay income tax. If the tax, if the income exceed the 1.2 million per year, only that person is liable to pay income tax. Second thing is, even though there is a provision in the Inland Revenue Act to impose penalty who fail the register, we do not use that section. Then we do not impose penalty, because we know number of people want to get the TIN certificate, number of people. So it takes some times to obtain or issue that TIN number in the IRD part. So that is why we do not impose any penalty on this regard. And what I want to tell other thing, if we can expand the income tax income by catching tax evaders, then government is in a position to reduce VAT rates, and government can provide more facilities to a Sri Lankan citizen by developing infrastructure, etc. That's the thing.
More relief if you comply with taxes, Mr. Sulaiman Nista.
Yeah, so like your question mentioned, how do we encourage people to come into it and contribute as a whole so that everybody benefits? And one of the key areas is, I think, accountability, like you started off your question with, from the government side, where this money is going and that it's not misused. So as much as this gazette was issued, there was so much publicity given to it, there was a threat that a penalty will be imposed if you don't, whether that similar kind of recognition and force can be given to one or two improvements that the government is doing from the expenditure side, whether you can bring some efficiency and then bring that to the public to show that they are also committed, whilst you are tightening your belt, we have done these things as well, and we are going into this as together as one, and that will, I think, help encourage people to come in as well.
Thank you very much for your time here at Hyde Park. We were discussing Sri Lanka's new tax reforms and regulations to comply with taxation. I'd like to thank the Senior Deputy Commissioner for Inland Revenue Department, Mr. Nihal Wijewardana, who's joined us tonight to discuss this again. We had with us Mr. Saman Shantha, Deputy Commissioner General of Inland Revenue. Thank you very much for your time here. And also Mr. Sulaiman Nista, Partner, Head of Tax at Ernst & Young. Thank you very much for your time here as well. We'll see you again next week with yet another discussion here at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.